Democrats are facing a July 27th deadline to name the replacement for Maine Senate candidate Graham Platner. Platner announced Wednesday he is dropping out of the race following a sexual assault allegation, actually several of them. In order for his name not to appear on the November ballot, Platner has to drop out by Monday. So he says he won't be filing the paperwork until the last minute. And sources tell CBS News that he is willing to wait. So CBS News political reporter Zak Hudak joins us now to explain more. Zak, so Platner already said on video that he's going to drop out. Why hasn't he filed the paperwork?
There's really only one reason, Adriana, for him to drag his feet here, and that's to try to exert some influence over the state Democratic Party's process to replace him. Once he's out of this race as a scandal-ridden former candidate, he will have no weight to influence who the nominee will be in the state of Maine. So the longer he can stay in, the longer he can try to do that. Now, we've seen, even in a post overnight from the executive director of the state party, that this is frustrating them. They want to do this process by themselves. They do not think that Platner should have any role in it. And we did get this morning some details on what that process is going to look like. We know that they're going to hold a nominating convention at some point before that July 27th deadline to name someone. At that convention, there will be 600 delegates voting. And to get on that ballot, candidates are going to have until July 15th to register with the party, submit the paperwork, and then they'll have another 5 days to gather at least 500 signatures. And they have to have 50 of them come from at least 8 different counties. So a fairly low threshold to get on the ballot. But what we don't know yet is what the voting will look like among those delegates. Will there be a threshold that a candidate has to reach, or will it be a simple majority? Will there be multiple votes? We don't know that yet, so there's still a lot to be figured out, but this process is moving forward, and the party has really no option but to move forward at a very quick pace here.
So, Zach, several people have already thrown their name in the hat to be Platner's replacement. I want to play some sound from one of the contenders, Democrat Jordan Wood. Here's what he told our Major Garrett on the Takeout last night.
I had called on Graham Platner to leave this race because I knew he had lied to us about several things around the Reddit posts and his tattoo. I was forced out of that race because of that decision. He should have dropped out on Monday and let this process unfold. The way that he and some of his advisors are trying to control the process and pick a nominee is exactly the wrong thing to do, to have the public and voters who are deeply betrayed and hurt by Graham right now. They are the ones in control of our elections, of our democracy, and who is moving forward. We've got to all coalesce behind that candidate.
So is there any indication of who Platner's replacement could potentially be and what their platform is? I think one of the things that we saw with Platner is that his brand of as being a named Democrat is very different than the establishment types that are leading the Democratic Party right now. Is whoever looking to replace him in that vein, using that platform that seemed to attract so many millions of Maine voters to Platner, or are they more of an establishment type?
Vlad, I think it's too early to tell the direction the party is going to go, but it could certainly go either direction. There's Jordan Wood, who you just played that clip from. He is a much more establishment type character. He's someone who used to be a chief of staff for a House member, for a fairly moderate House member. So that's a very different direction. That would be more in line with the success that Democrats have had with Jared Golden in Maine, a very moderate member who's been able to break through to those more centrist voters in the state. At the same time, there's a guy like Troy Jackson, who is much closer to Platner politically, progressive, maybe not quite as much so, doesn't identify as DSA, but still very progressive, and began as an outsider, was a logger before he joined the state Senate and became the president of the state Senate. So Troy Jackson would be the one most in Platner's mold. There's also Nirav Shah, the former director of the Maine CDC. That's another establishment candidate who had a big name rec boost during the pandemic. At the same time, you have Sheena Bellows, another progressive who's a bit more entrenched in the establishment in the state than Platner is. She's the Secretary of State, so she oversees the elections in the state. And then finally, among the main contenders here, you have Dan Klaban, who is the co-founder of the Maine Brewing Company in Maine, another outsider, although Klaban did run for the nomination with Platner and lost, so he probably has a lower chance here. So the party could go in the Platner direction or realign and go for a more moderate to try to take on Susan Collins.
Lots of options. Zak Hudak, thank you so much.
Thanks, Zach.